we'll call the meeting to order of the Regional Planning Commission, Kingston Springs. Roll call of voting members. Keith Allgood.
Present.
Donna Boggs. Absent. Tony Campbell.
Present.
Gary Corlew. Here. Tom Cullen.
Here.
Tony Gross.
Here.
Brian McCain.
Here.
Welcome, Brian. Thank you. Mike Patnode here. Chuck Slater. Absent. Non-voting staff, Sharon Armstrong.
Here.
Don Lawless.
Here.
And somebody who I don't think is Jennifer No.
I'm shocked we put more
Okay.
on there tonight.
So we have a quorum. You have the August 9th meeting minutes before you. Do we have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? All right. Minutes are approved. Now we have this agenda before you. Do we have a motion to approve this agenda for today's meeting?
So moved. Second.
All right. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. This agenda is approved. So for old business, we have two items in there, and they are standing items that we're just keeping visibility on, and my understanding is there is nothing to discuss on either of these items. One is the rezone request for West Kingston Springs Road, map 96K, Indian Point Partners, rezone the lot from R2 to R3, and exceptions on the PUD overlay, and then the other item is the proposed development of the East Kingston Springs Road, map 96K, parcels 33, 35, and 36, and the Pearson site.
I have questions either now or at the end of the meeting. I don't care.
We're at that point, so I guess.
I would like to know the status of each of them.
I spoke, as I related to you at last meeting, that I spoke to Mr. Francis, asked him to submit or give his engineer permission to submit a geotechnical report that was produced for the property. I relayed to you his desire to have some assistance in marketing the commercial lots, and that's as far as we've gotten. This will fall dead with inaction after a year from the first time he appeared. It just falls dead and falls off the agenda. So we're at the point where we're waiting on the applicant.
What day is that?
Pardon?
When will
the year run out?
The first time that he came before you was in February, so in February again it will drop.
Let me ask you a question.
Certainly.
Your opinion or judgment. All of the rock that he's stocked up front, Kingston to add to it appears. Is that legal? I mean, where's he going to use it? There's no place for it on that project.
The question of resolution on the lots that are proposed for development is somewhat complicated. One, we can find nothing in the record that indicates that a geotechnical report was ever produced for the lots next door. For the city, he may have one himself. Secondarily, I just need a letter from TDAG saying he's cleared on the violation that was there. Third, there can't be any more activity on the lot without a permit of some type. If he's going to store, fill, and then resell it, that's fine, but he needs a permit to do that. Then he'll need to update the geotechnical report that was produced in 2005 to include the fill that was placed on the property since that time. So those are the outstanding issues that we have on the property. Until those are resolved, we can't.
So in essence, he's in violation right now.
He is.
We have some action taken on that, please?
We sent a letter at the Planning Commission's request, as you know, 2 months ago, advising him of those points again. I have spoken to him a couple of times, once on the phone and once in person. So our methodology for dealing with this in another month would just be to start code enforcement action in order to acquire the things that we need. Planning Commission doesn't have the authority to enforce a code issue. That has to be done through code.
But it's a good way for the Planning Commission to call it to the attention of the city manager.
Yes, you can direct that be done.
All right, now, moving on to Mr. whatever his name is.
Pearson.
Pearson.
If you put that in the form of a motion, a second, and a vote, then it gives the staff direction to move forward.
To the Francis property?
Are you talking about item A?
Pardon?
Are you talking about item A or item B when you?
Item A. Item B, We are as far as we can go on item B. The geotechnical engineer and the project engineer, Mr. Lyon, who came to the commission about 3 months ago, has indicated that he will have the grading and excavation and remediation plan prepared by the 3rd week of September, which is next week. That's unfortunately occurs after this. So once we have that grading plan and remediation plan, we'll do the review. And then if it needs compliance with what the geotechnical report requires him to do to stabilize the property, then we can issue a grading permit and an excavation permit for him to cause those things to happen. Once that's done, we'll have to re-examine, and the geotechnical engineer will have to re-examine the lot to make sure that it's stable. He'll probably do several more test floors on the property. He'll furnish a report, we'll do that, and hopefully by next meeting, we'll have something to report on that.
Does that report cover the whole property, or is it only the part that was going to be developed?
It's only the parts where it's going to be developed. It examines the extent of the fill on the property, every place where fill is present. We had them go back and overlay, we furnished that to you, and 2 meetings ago, overlaid the boreholes on the development plan that he presented to the Planning Commission several months back. The boreholes lie at the edge of that, so as the excavation stabilization of the property is done, the geotechnical engineer has indicated that he will move to bore locations that line up with the development on the property. He'll just do those to make sure everything is stable, and then he will furnish to them a plan to remediate what has to be excavated, what steps have to be made, and then he's also written in his report that after the excavation is done, there exists a possibility that the footings on those locations will be 10 feet wide and 4 feet deep. So it's going to be challenging, which is why we put so much effort into trying to get Mr. McPherson to stop, because he was creating a hazard for himself.
So it's not really financially appealing as it stands now.
The geotechnical report does not contain any costing information, but I have had one discussion with Mr. Lyon, his project engineer, and my understanding is that the cost to remediate the filling on the property and the excavation of the property will be in excess of $250,000.
All right, did you say you need a motion from this body instructing the city manager to?
We do. If you want to proceed and you're ready for us to dispense with the submissions and we're ready to move on, then we have no other mechanism to enforce, because he has plans before this body. And we requested the geotechnical report in this body. So if you're ready for them to submit something, then you would make that motion, and John and I will work together with Martha Brooke and Jennifer to get that code enforcement letter out. My advice to you would be to wait until the 3rd week of September so that we can see what the grading excavation
So
plan
see if October
brings us.
Okay.
Because if it's sufficient to remediate, then we can compel him to begin that process, and we'll have specific references from which to work.
You just have to find a lawyer.
It's been a long process. If left to my own devices, I probably would have code enforced this a year ago.
All right, thank you.
So that's item B.
It took us a year literally to get the horse to work. But now he's there, and now he's there, he's expended the funds to give him this opportunity to move forward.
So, got that on item B. Any other questions on item B? Okay, so on item A, I didn't follow where we left that. So we have a letter there that was sent. It will expire in a year, which will be February.
That's correct.
Did we talk about anything else on item A, or is that where it stands?
Well, the letter and the submission, those were separate things,
They
right?
were.
Those were totally
The
separate.
letter
So a
was-
year in February will be
Right.
the submission itself when
That's
that
correct.
expires.
Mr. Francis came to speak to us, and then the letter was a separate item.
And did
About
the letter
2 months
have,
ago.
did the letter have a time limit on it for anything? It didn't
did not
specify
have a time.
date. Okay.
But the letter advised the applicant to contact the city manager in order to discuss a timeline
Okay.
to get these things done.
Gotcha.
And we have not had a response from that process.
Anything else on the old business? Okay. So under new business, first item, item A, is revision of subdivision regulations, chapter 4, section 4-105.2, etc. Requirements for a traffic impact study.
This one is mine. I requested that John put this on. As you know, when the Thornton's project came through, we had difficulty in requiring a traffic study. The language in our ordinance is somewhat loosely written. There are certain triggers. Had they not subdivided the lots, we could not have required a traffic study. That's the only mechanism to get there. There's nowhere in the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance simply references the subdivision regulations. I also have concerns of the threshold of development by which the traffic studies are required. Right now, it has to generate 2,500 car trips a day in order to trigger that study. In addition to that, there have to be 100 units placed on any given lot before it's triggered. So my concern is on our major thoroughfares and corridors, that's a very high trigger in order to generate that traffic study. And in Kingston Springs in particular, the TDOT report has already rated the on-ramp to I-40 at an F. So it's a compromised on-ramp anyway. So particularly on the major thoroughfares of Kingston Springs Road and Lyman Hills, I want to reduce that threshold requirement for a traffic study. And I would like permission to draft that language to reduce the number of units to 50. And I would like to reduce the number of trips to 1,200. As
We had more
know-
than that on Maple, we had more than that on Maple Street on Sunday.
Well, my concern is the major corridors are also the access points for our schools. So I always have this. My primary concern is not only the traffic on the road surface on an everyday basis, but if we have an emergency of any kind, that's going to be an untenable situation. We also have a T-grant going down Lyman Hills Road for sidewalks and other things, and we're rapidly going to run out of room for additional lanes or any accommodation depending on the development that we have. So if we don't trigger it through a traffic study, we can't get turn lanes or improvements to the road or any of the other things that we really need.
I move that we authorize the planner to develop subdivision regulations setting up a traffic study.
Zoning ordinance too.
Second
I want
that.
to foster it.
Well, do you want it to do it in one motion? I also add zoning regs, the same thing.
Yes, sir.
So item B,
Item A and
Item 1.
item A and B. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussions or questions? I have a question. In terms of moving it from 100 units and 2,500 car trips a day, and it makes good sense what you're saying, but are there any like planning standards that have these thresholds already based on like road sizes and density?
There are, and they are dependent, that's what I will use as the standard
all
that's recommended by APA. The threshold is predicated on the rating of your adjacent location to an interstate and on-ramp, so that language is already
So
present.
you're bringing us where we need to be, right?
There are
Okay.
AASHTO standards that apply to this. They're freely available and easily replicated for your jurisdiction.
Mhm.
We are about 50% below that threshold because
Okay.
these were written originally in the 90s.
Okay. Thank you. So we have a motion to draft a revision to the subdivision regulations for traffic impact study and rezoning and zoning ordinance. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Capital Builders concept review of potential apartment complex.
Yes, I'm Matthew Fetch from Capital Builders.
Okay?
We're looking at the parcel at 1301 West Kingston Springs Road. It's, I think it's approximately 9.2 acres. It's currently zoned C2, I think, which is commercial development. It's, if you're not familiar with it, I think it's the next adjacent parcel from Harvard Middle School. And our intention with that site, if you all see fit, would be to develop a small strip center on the front of the parcel.
Okay, so I'm sorry to interrupt you. When you said Harpeth Middle School, do you mean Harpeth High School?
Harvard High School.
Okay,
High School.
all right, so you're on the other side of the road from Harpeth Middle School. Okay,
That's what
so you're talking about the property that's adjacent on the nearer side, near the interstate from Harpeth High School.
That's correct.
He's right not adjacent.
He's right next to the cleared lot up here.
Next to Sonic?
Right next to the cleared lot.
Okay.
Behind Sonic.
Oh,
That's absolutely
next to
right.
that clear line.
Yeah, right next to the lot.
Now, I understand there's a parcel between the lot we're looking at and Harvard High School.
There is, it's all in the floodplain.
Right. It's not- The lot that we're looking at is 9.2 acres. I understand there's about 5 usable acres on that lot. The rest is in floodplain, it's my understanding. And our thoughts there were that we'd like to do a small strip shopping center on the front, approximately 15,000 square feet, and multifamily units behind that in the remainder of the parcel.
So, Madam Planner, you wanted to take us away on this?
Comments that I have in regard to this is obviously a concept submission. During the growth plan process in the county, all the jurisdictions in the county together under state mandate, it was required by law, prepared a growth plan. Within that growth plan, the quarter on East Kingston Springs Road in that section and Lyman Hills were reserved as commercial development. And that's done for a number of reasons. One, commercial development usually pays its own way, unlike residential development. It uses less services, it generates less traffic on a daily basis. So those decisions were made jointly with the other jurisdictions in the county, and they laid out those quarter reservations that exist across the county. So that's the first hurdle that this project has, because it was reserved as commercial thoughtfully and frankly purposely for that particular area. The second concern that I have is it's adjacent to the school. So for those of you who live here at 7:30 in the morning, the mix is a little dicey. That mix also includes somewhat of a mass exodus to the interstate, where the on-ramp is already rated an F. So traffic is going to be a primary factor in any development that goes along that corridor. The lot itself contains a significant amount of flood area, which reduces the buildability of the lot itself. Regardless of the type of development, you cannot build in a flood area in Kingston Springs. And then my fourth concern is adding any type of emergency service vehicle to that mix, either in the morning or the afternoon. You have previously approved a commercial project, C2, down Lyman Hills Road, that will generate a fair amount of large truck traffic crossing all 3 lanes. So I have reservations about the type of development because of the intensity of traffic. I have reservations about its location and proximity to the school, and I have definite reservations about the flood area located on the property. As we all know, the new maps reduce the flood area in Kingston Springs, even though the areas that were reduced flooding. And as I relayed to you, I think 3 meetings back, the Corps of Engineers is in the process of challenging that study because it does not encompass the flood area correctly. The data doesn't match what landed on the map. So that particular area flooded during 2010. So my reservation is always, when you take away commercial zoning, you are denying economic development potential within that area. And the balance in this county is somewhat anemic. We're at about 9% commercial as opposed to residential. a healthy mix is somewhere between 15 and 17%. So the county has put a great deal of effort through the JECD and the Economic Development Board into trying to encourage commercial development to lessen the inequality between those two types of development, and also to boost your tax revenues so that you're not constantly having to raise your taxes. So those are my concerns. Once you rezone it, it opens the door to every other parcel in that area, down East Kingston Springs Road and down Lyman Hills. So you're setting a precedent if you decide to entertain this. So those are my concerns.
So, thank you.
Yes, sir.
When I'm looking at the agenda item, it says concept review, but what it sounds like is it's a request to rezone. Is it not?
My advice to the applicant, Chairman, was when I spoke to him on the phone and he laid out the premise of his project, I advised him before he expended a great deal of money and time and resources to come and have a conversation. We have that process within our planning commission regulations, our zoning book, and our subdivision regulations. I always advise applicants up front to come and have a discussion first. So that's why they're here.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have some questions for Capitol Builders?
I don't necessarily have questions. I'm very supportive of the idea that we need some rental
Affordable
dwellings.
housing.
Kingston Springs. I certainly have a lot of heartburn with that location. It just doesn't make a lot of sense there. It's on a curve in the road, it's very busy. I don't think a lot of thoughts have been gone into it. I certainly think there's probably some other property in the city that would qualify and just may be more expensive, but that's okay.
I would concur with that sentiment 100%. There is a need for decent, safe, affordable housing in Kingston Springs. My concern is not the housing itself, it's the location. We're already so compressed that TDOT, we raised red flags when the Thornton's project came through. A great deal of effort had to go into that with the traffic generation across Lyman Hills Road. There are residentially zoned properties available throughout the city that don't lie adjacent to the major traffic bearing corridor in the city and then the access to the interstate. And I think my concern is the same as Mr. Campbell's. The location is simply a huge challenge for residential development.
Can I comment on that from our perspective?
Sure.
If I recall properly from our conversation, you told me that the original thought there was that regarding that property, that it was going to be used for interstate commercial. Interstate commercial would bring a lot of large trucks down West Kingston Springs Road, which seems to be that in itself would be difficult. But our thoughts as developers, and I assure you this is the thought nationally, is that we want sites located very close to interstate exits. Very close, as close as we can get, particularly if we're looking at a suburb of Nashville that's that's within close proximity of Nashville. So the site for us is ideal. It will bring some people from Kingston Springs that work in Kingston Springs, but we feel like the majority of our customer base will come from Nashville to Kingston Springs. Secondly, part of the site we have dedicated to commercial. It was our understanding from the real estate broker that 2 acres of that site are in the flood zone. When we looked closer at the site, we dedicated 4 acres to flood zone. We planned apartments with 20 units per acre density, which is considerably less than we've ever done in the past. So we've got light density on the site. We dedicated a larger amount than what we were told was flood zone, quite a bit larger amount than what we were told was flood zone to flood zone. We've lightly populated the site, and there's a balance between commercial and residential. It might be an ideal spot to begin to buffer the area where you have your high schools and your residential area from some of that commercial. Just as a city, thinking to myself in my own neighborhood, I would hate to have large trucks coming down school for down the street where there's a school to access that site if there was a curb cut on West Kingston Springs.
I don't want big trucks on it either.
Oh, when you're talking big trucks, you're talking about delivery, right?
Well, no, I mean, it's interstate commercial if you have a gas station or a pilot station or something along those lines. I mean, you're basically catering to large semi-trucks. Did I get that right, Sharon, in our initial discussion that it was
If
originally
I
slated
could
for
respond to
interstate
that,
commercial?
large truck traffic is restricted to Liven Hills Road for development here. The concern that I think that I have is the compactness of this development. They don't have a zoning district that allows that density at all. Anything over a measured number of units is done with a PUD overlay here. They have no density that allows anything other than a small footprint apartment complex on an R3 lot. So the reason for that is they wanted to develop slowly, and they didn't want density because of their proximity to the interstate and because of the challenges they already have. TDOT did the study for the interstate on-ramp and the exit 10 years ago, and it was rated an F. And traffic has increased since then. So the barriers to development in that particular location are directly related to the stacking of traffic that occurs every day trying to get to the interstate. So the location, where I understand your argument that it's a great location for the working class to hit the interstate and go to work. For them, they're already dealing with an intersection that's a nightmare where the state invested absolutely no improvements for decades. So traffic now can go all the way back to East Kingston Springs Road and stop before the movement goes forward. And when you calculate that with school traffic in the morning and people trying to go to work in the afternoon, the truck stop on the other side of the interstate, and then people trying to go about their daily lives, it makes it an unnavigable order. So the location, I think it's not the idea of it, it's not the concept of it. Kingston Springs is a very small town. It's a very small footprint. There are properties available that are further away from that en masse encampment. It occurs twice a day. That might be more suitable for that. They're already zoned R2. So for them, the zoning of that as a commercial lot was deliberate. It was done in order to address the issue that's already present, to limit residential development and not to have that residential mix in the middle of two truck stops.
How will the inhabitants in these other locations that you speaking of, get to those locations? Will they not use the same routes? I don't understand how it will trade.
There are alternate routes through Highway 70 that are located on the fringes of the city across from existing subdivisions that also provide access to a corridor into Nashville that are less traveled, less trafficked, less of an issue.
And that's where those sites are.
Pardon?
And that's where those sites are located.
Yes. So there's no action on this tonight. He simply came and I think he had, he furnished a drawing. If the applicant decides to move forward, he would submit a formal application to rezone. That would be the next step for this project. Because right now, that zone does not tolerate residential development.
Understand. And just from a, I live in Kingston Springs perspective, how many residential units?
85.
85.
20.
So another problem that really strikes me in that road is there's a whole lot of traffic from Kingston Springs that comes from this side of town and tries to go to the high school. And there's a whole lot of traffic that comes from this and the middle school. And there's a whole lot of traffic that comes and gets on the interstate. And that traffic also comes from the east side up to get on the interstate. And if this is sitting on the outside of that road, and those people are primarily Nashville workers, and they're trying to exit and take a left turn across all the traffic going to the high school and get stuck in the stoplight jam, which is trying to get onto the interstate. That just seems like a horrible place to try to get out and get on the interstate. You're going across two flows that are already jammed up. And I think if I wouldn't even want to live there if I saw that morning
It
traffic.
would likely require a traffic light. It would be
But
stacked up
there's
on
no
top of
place
that.
for the cars to stop because
right,
they're jammed at the freeway. They're coming to the high school and middle school, both schools, because the car rider lines are huge here. They're big. So anyway, I just see that as problematic, just thinking of somebody who lives here.
I already don't drive all that way when I go to work. I go home because I don't want to deal with it.
You know,
Right.
yeah. So I just share that from seeing it every day.
I'm ready to move on.
Okay, anything else on this? Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Shell Sudden Service, exterior facade remodel. At this point, it looks like we're supposed to recess this meeting and convene the design review committee meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Oh. So do we need a motion to recess this meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, nobody's opposed. All right, so we have just recessed the planning commission meeting to open the design review committee meeting, and so I need to call roll again for the design review committee. Keith Allgood?
Present.
Donna Boggs, absent. Tony Campbell? Here. Gary Corlew? Here. Tom Cullen? Here. Tony Gross?
Here.
Brian Kane? Here. Mike Patnode's here. Chuck Slater, absent. Non-voting staff, Sharon Armstrong?
Here.
John Lawless?
Here.
And not Jennifer, no. Okay, Martha Quinn. We have quorum for the design review committee. Okay, we have to approve the November 9th design review committee
So
minutes.
moved.
All right.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Those minutes are approved. Motion to approve this meeting agenda. So moved. Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? All right, this agenda is approved. So no old business. The new business is Shell Sudden Service, 129 Lyman Hills Road, exterior facade remodel. Yes, sir.
I'm Dan Newbill with Hollingsworth Oil Company, and it's exactly what you said. We'd like to remodel the outside of just the sudden service portion of this store because the Arby's has already been done. And it's time for a refresh.
So there was some discussion about some things not being compliant.
I did an initial review on this project, sent my comments back to Dan. One of those was they needed to acquire a signature from the property owner before they can move forward, because we always require that so that we're insulated from any action that may be taken. I had a couple of comments on the site plan that I needed cleaned up. Those were addressed. We had some discussion about signage. The signage that he'll display to you in a minute came through also separately on a sign application and a sign plan. The ordinance, the sign ordinance just don't allow the location of the sign face above the roof line of the building. The facade is not considered the roof line of the building. So that board does not reflect the sign plan that was submitted. And the submitted revised sign plan, the sign goes below the roof line. So that was the only question that we had for that. I also advised the applicants, since it was a full-face facade and they were adding additional square footage to the building for the entry, that they would need to bring in the materials, because we do require that on a retrofit. It's not, the edges of the design guidelines are not as hard for a remodel as they are for a new build, but I wanted you to get a view of what the building was going to look like, what the facade was going to look like, what the carports at the end were going to look like, and the new entry. So you will be asked as a design review committee to approve the building materials for the facade, with the understanding that the sign plan and application do not reflect where that sign is located on that old customer building.
Now, is that all worked out with them? I mean,
It is.
you understand what you have to do?
Yes.
all comments have been addressed. They changed that sign to, rather than a board sign located above, it's now a inset into the building and drops below the roof line.
Okay. And the materials, are there any open questions on the materials?
Pardon?
Are there any other questions on the materials that,
There are not. You simply need to review those. The materials meet within and fall within the guidelines of the materials that you allow. So you don't even have to give any exceptions or latitude to it. They're actually included in the list of things that you accept. It's just a formal review so they can move forward.
okay, so this is simply recommending approval of the facade, but not the sign, which is a different thing.
Of the building materials for the facade.
Building materials, okay.
So moved.
We got a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? None? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
You go all the way back to where Springfield?
Okay, so now we're going to recess this meeting.
Adjourn this meeting.
Adjourn this meeting.
Move adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? This meeting is adjourned. We're going to go back and reconvene the Kingston Springs Planning Commission meeting. You bet. Let me get the right piece of paper here. So there's an item D sub 3, consideration of adoption of DRC recommendations for new business, item D,
So what we have to do is accept the recommendation
of the design
of the
review
design
committee.
review board.
No, we just recommend.
It's a
That's
through
right,
process,
that's
yeah.
right. Okay. So, do we have a motion on adopting?
Motion to accept.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on adopting what we just approved or recommended? Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's passed. Anything else, Mr. City Manager?
No, sir, covered it.
Okay.
Sure.
Sure.
Do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Aye.